missing in here. I do have folks out in other classes, though. So, again, maybe 15 minutes, maybe a few more minutes than that, and then I have something for you to do. I'll let you start in class, and it'll actually be your homework. You should have Georgia facts and figures. It's just front and back. Won't take us long at all. But I will start with this quote because I think it becomes the groundwork for our look at Georgia history. It comes from the book Georgia Odyssey, which is one of our supplementary texts that we'll use in class from time to time. And Mr. Cobb says, what all self-designated Georgians share either by birthright or by adoption is a common past. And we've said that in here before. Our past, whether we were born here or we moved here, is common. We have a story that we share. And I've talked to you about my mom and dad. I've talked to you about my children and my grandchildren already because they're part of my story. And your parents passed, and your grandparents passed, and you and your brothers and sisters, your story becomes part of my story. And together, collectively, we become the story of Georgia. It becomes the history of Georgia. Cobb goes on. He says, not all that past is pretty or pleasant to recall. Whose is? But any attempt to understand the character and personality of contemporary Georgia must take into account its sometimes disturbing, sometimes appealing, but always rich and eventful historical odyssey. And I've told you before, we're going to talk about things that will disturb you. You'll be bothered when you leave here some days. But then there are days where you'll be overjoyed. Whatever we learned, it was a great thing that took place. A great person did something, or there was some event that causes us to celebrate. And we'll look at those, of course, but we're also going to look at those dark times in Georgia's history, and there are many of them, unfortunately. But they come together. Just like your story is not always pleasant, sometimes it's downright disturbing, but it's your story, right? And you can't go back and change things. We can't go back and change what happened in Georgia's history. What we can do is learn from it. And hopefully that's what we'll do. So I'm going to give you some stuff. It's kind of like, if you're ever called on to be on Jeopardy, some things you might want to know. Being from Georgia, some things you should know. So just some figures. Excuse me. Georgia was founded on February 12th, 1733 by James Edward Oglethorpe. Actually, General James Edward Oglethorpe. Do you have one of those, Lord? There you go. Mm-hmm. General James Edward Oglethorpe, and Georgia became the 13th colony. Now, yesterday, I was reading this proclamation to another class, and I found a mistake. The governor's office, made a mistake. It says this: by the governor of the state of Georgia, a proclamation, Georgia Day. See, right there? Georgia. Man, look at that. Georgia Day. Whereas the state of Georgia was founded by General James Edward Oglethorpe. I agree with that. That's right. That's correct. Who received a royal charter to establish a colony in honor of King George II. And that's where they're wrong. Because Georgia, Oglethorpe, did not receive a royal charter. A royal charter would mean that the colony was under direct control of the king through a royal governor. Georgia was initially founded as a trustee colony. There were 20 trustees, 19 of which lived in England. One lived in Georgia, and that was James Oglethorpe. It was a trustee colony, a totally different animal. And so I've got to figure out how to call the governors in office and tell them that they are idiots and they got the thing wrong. Should I do that?
Yes.
Okay. I'll do it. I'll word it differently. I'll say, there's a mistake. And I just wonder how long that mistake has been made. Interesting. To me, it is, anyway. Georgia becomes the fourth state. It was the 13th colony. It becomes the fourth state in 1788, January 2nd of 1788. It approves or ratifies the Constitution of the United States. We'll talk a lot about this guy standing over in the corner throughout the year, Abraham Lincoln, particularly when we're talking about prior to the Civil War, and of course, a week after the Civil War ends. And one of the things that I like to bring out about Abraham Lincoln is this. First of all, the Civil War was not called the Civil War. Anybody know what it might have been called? Huh? No. It was the war. The war. No, we're not even going to talk about what you said just a minute ago because I think I felt brain cells die. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure I did. But Lincoln, during his time, it's called the war. During the Civil War, it's actually called the war. It's later named the Civil War by historians. That's one of the cool things about being a historian. You get to name stuff. But Lincoln is the president of the United States of America. And this war is being fought by or between the United States of America and the Confederate States of America. Except Lincoln doesn't see it that way. He never calls the Confederate States of America the Confederate States of America. They're always referred to as the states that are currently in rebellion. And he does that because he never feels like they left the United States. They were always a part of it. Now, why do I tell you that? Georgia's the fourth state. After the Civil War, Georgia is the last state to be readmitted to the Union. In fact, we were so good at being readmitted to the Union, we had to do it 3 times. And then it finally stuck. In the early 1900s, when the Lincoln Memorial was built, how many of you have ever been to Washington, D.C. and seen the Lincoln Memorial? Pretty cool, isn't it? And if we get the chance, I'll tell you some stuff about the Lincoln Memorial, and we'll take time to actually talk about Lincoln a little bit. But outside, if you look up at the top of the Lincoln Memorial, you see the names of the states engraved all the way around the Lincoln Memorial. And they're engraved in the order in which they were admitted to the Union. Guess where Georgia is? It's number 4. Why? Because Lincoln felt like those 11 states that seceded from the Union in reality didn't. They were always a part of the United States. And Lincoln was just trying to keep it together. But Georgia, if you look over here, under all those books, signed a document that said, we quit. We no longer want to be a part of you. In January of 1861. But yet, as a sign of unity, every state that left the Union is recognized as never having left it. And whenever they did it, is when they did it. In the 1700s or the 1800s or even the 1900s. So, our state motto is wisdom, justice, and moderation. You've heard that every day. We are actually the 8th most populous state in the Union, according to the 2020 census, and I haven't updated my slide. You can put 8th if you want to, if you just have to be right. I think on your test it still says 9th, but you can go with either one. And I'll give you that. Georgia's actually a big state. It takes you quite a while to drive from one end of it or all the way across it. It's 57,513 square miles, which makes it the 24th largest state in the Union. What's the largest state in the Union? Alaska. when I went to Alaska, I almost bought a T-shirt that had this outline map of Alaska, and inside it had an outline map of Texas, and it said Alaska, pissing off Texas since 1959. Because Texas likes we're the biggest. Nope. You could put 37 Alaskas or 37 Texases inside Alaska. That's how big. I don't know if it's 37, but it's quite a few. Georgia is actually the largest state east of the Mississippi. So if we go over here, I could have gotten Joyce to do this. She could have been my helper. Here is Mississippi River right here. If you look over here, Georgia is the largest state in terms of square mileage east of the Mississippi River. No, Florida's a tiny little state. They're insignificant. They're not important. It's Florida. It's hot. It's humid. Wait a minute. That sounds an awful lot like here, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. But they got ocean. Wait a minute. Never mind. So we have 100 miles of coastline. So if you look right over here from Cumberland Sound right here, Fernandina Beach, rather, can't read. Georgia-Florida state line is right there, and then all the way to the mouth of the Savannah River is Georgia's coastline. Now, why do we mention that? We're going to talk about geography starting tomorrow, the physical makeup of Georgia. And actually, that's a pretty important thing. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to see if you remember it. The last major hurricane to make direct landfall in Georgia was in 1883. It's called the Sea Island hurricane, and it was devastating. We haven't had a major hurricane hit Georgia in over 100 years. Why? It's a little bitty target that those hurricanes have to aim for. And most of the time, the Gulf Stream pushes them up towards South Carolina and North Carolina. Huh? What? Yeah, because they do get hit pretty frequently. There's one churning around in the Atlantic right now. Brasstown Ball, way up in northeast Georgia. When we journeyed to Towns County to defeat Towns County in the Sweet 16, or was it the Final Four? That's the Final Four, yeah. That's basically where we were. If you stand on top of Brasstown Ball and you start walking, and you walk to Savannah, that's a heck of a walk, you will have almost 5,000 feet in elevation. It is pretty cool. Georgia, again, is very diverse, and we're going to see that as we start looking at things tomorrow. Georgia has 16 electoral votes. What's an electoral vote? Anybody know? Let's hear from Caleb. Yeah. So, if I'm running for president, Ellie Westmoreland is my vice presidential candidate, even though she's not old enough. By the time she gets old enough, I'll be 137 years old. So we got to do it now, Ellie, if we're going to do it. Okay? So we're running for president. We're both from Georgia. You guys are all our friends. You campaign for us. You vote for us. And we win the popular vote. We have more people that vote for us in Georgia than any other candidate. So guess what? Ellie and I get 16 electoral votes. We've got to get to 270 to be president and vice president, which means we got work to do. We better go to Texas and win Texas. We better go out to California and win it. We're not going to worry about Alaska or South Dakota or North Dakota, but we're going to win Florida if we're going to be president. We're going to win New York, okay? We're going to win Ohio. And if we do that, we're going to be president. There's only 3 votes in Alaska. I don't need those 3 votes. I need the 54 that come out of California. So why does Georgia have 16 electoral votes? we have 2 senators, right? And you should know who those 2 are. Even if you don't like them, you should know who they are. And we have 14 representatives in the House of Representatives. So 2 senators, 14 representatives means that we have 16 electoral votes. Now, how is representation in the House determined? Somebody said it just a minute ago. Somebody said the word population. Is that you? Okay. So we get so many representatives for so many, I think it's 200,000 people. So Georgia has 14 representatives. 14 congressional districts that are represented. You probably should know who our representative is, although he announced yesterday he's either running for governor or lieutenant governor. I can't remember which. I just kind of heard it in passing, so I'll find that out. But his name's Jody Hice. Our 2 senators, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. Both Republicans, both elected at the same time, which creates a problem. Because there's always a senior senator. He's the one who's had the most experience or the most years in the Senate, the most time in the Senate. And then there's a junior senator. I don't know. It probably boils down to whoever took the oath of office first. But I don't know. There'll be extra points if somebody will find that out. All right. Georgia, if you start walking in Tennessee and you walk down to this little bump that sticks down into Florida, you will have walked 300 miles. If you go Columbus and you decide you want to walk to Augusta, you want to be like Forrest Gump and run across Georgia, you will have run about 230 miles. So at its longest point, Georgia's 300 miles long. At its widest, which probably be Columbus to Savannah, is 230 miles wide. Twiggs County. Everybody know where Twiggs County is? Yeah, I think Twiggs County's coming up here in a couple of weeks. Play football. Oh, we're going to show them. All right. Twiggs is last time we played them. Oof, it was ugly. Twiggs County's right here, and in fact, if you get up and look at this map, there's a little dot that says the geographic center of Georgia. That is the geographic center, right dead smack dab in the middle. So that's one of the reasons Milledgeville became the state capital or was created to be the state capital, because it was really centrally located. All right. Now, some facts. These are the things you're going to need to know on Jeopardy. The state flower is the Cherokee rose. So if the answer is Cherokee rose, the question would be, what is the state flower of Georgia? And now you know. The state bird is the ugliest bird God ever created. The brown throat. He's not ugly. He's just plain. He's just plain. Yeah, you can see them. They're everywhere. The brown throat. You see a brown bird. No, that's an eagle. All right. State tree. The state tree is the live oak. And those are those oak trees that get really big. They get really wide. And there's actually a particular tree that is the state tree. It's down in Thomasville, Georgia. The state vegetable is the Vidalia onion. The state crop is the peanut. The state fruit is the peach. The state fish is the largemouth bass. And if you look on page 79 in your addendum, there's a lot more. Like, for example, the state marine mammal is the right whale. It's the right whale. The left whale died. They were extinct. They don't exist. The state prepared food, grits. Grits. I love me some grits. All right, state song. And I throw this up here because it's an interesting story behind it. And it's not just any recording of Georgia on My Mind. It's one in particular. The song's written by Hoagie Carmichael, not Hey Hoagie, but Hoagie Carmichael and Stuart Gorrell. Now, we don't know If Carmichael, because they never said, if Carmichael and Gorell were writing about a woman named Georgia or the state of Georgia, either way, the song makes perfect sense. Our state song is actually Georgia. And Ray Charles is one of those people you should know about. He is from Albany, Georgia. At a very young age, I think he was less than 10, he went blind. Huh? I'm sorry, what? Oh, yeah, Ray. It's a great movie. Who plays him? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's right. Jamie Foxx. He did a great job. But Ray Charles becomes a worldwide, world-known performer. He also has a drug problem. He comes to Georgia to play, and he's arrested for drug possession, and Georgia just kicks him out of the state, does not allow him to play, to perform in his home state. And so he doesn't. In the 1970s, there's a push by people to have Ray Charles kind of reinstated, allow him to come to Georgia and perform. And finally, in 1978, the Georgia General Assembly passes a proclamation, and Ray Charles is now free to come back to Georgia and perform. And he does. March 7th, 1979, he performs Georgia on My Mind in the Georgia General Assembly. And it sounded a little bit like this. Maybe.
Georgia, Georgia,
Hold it through.
just an old sweet song. Keeps Georgia on my mind. I said, Georgia, Georgia, a song of you. Conflict sweet and clear. As moonlight through the pines. Other arms reached out to me. Other eyes smile tenderly. Still in the peaceful dreams I see. The road leads back to you. I said, Georgia, oh, Georgia, no peace I find. Just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind. Other arms reach out to me. Other eyes smile tenderly. Still in peaceful dreams I see the road leads back to you. Whoa, Georgia, Georgia. No peace I find. Just an old sweet song. Georgia on my mind.
Was that him standing in front?
No, that was the guy that made this video. So That is our state song. We'll pull that out every once in a while and just listen to it because it's worth listening to. It's a great song. A lot of other performers have recorded Georgia on My Mind, but that is our official state song. All right, one more little thing. The Great Seal of Georgia, you have that on your paper there. You've got the front and the back, and let's just kind of walk through that, and we'll be done, and I can give you something to do. So, the Seal of Georgia is adopted by the General Assembly in 1799, so it's 222 years old now. And it is used to make things official. It's actually held by the Secretary of State. And there's a great story about Milledgeville and the Secretary of State and the seal. Took place in November of 1864. Anybody know what happened in Milledgeville in November of 1864? I'll give you a hint. There was a guy named William T. Sherman that was a part of it. Civil Wars. Sherman is marched to the sea. He comes through Milledgeville, and to keep the U.S. Army, to prevent the U.S. Army from taking control of the seal of Georgia, the Secretary of State, William Barnett, I believe was his name, took the seal and hid it in a pig pen, a hog pen. If you've ever been around hogs, it's not something you want to go schmucking around in trying to find something. So he hid it there. Also, some other stuff was hid downtown, but Barnett becomes kind of a hero of Sherman's occupation of Milledgeville. The seal is actually on our state flag, at least the front of it on our state flag. It has an arch, and on that arch is written the word Constitution. And then it's got three pillars, the three things that support the Constitution, the three branches of government. Legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch. On the first pillar, there's a scroll that says wisdom. In the middle, it says justice. And on the end, or the third one, says moderation. That should be familiar to you. That's the state motto. That's part of our pledge to the flag. And then, and you can see it in your in the picture that I gave you, there's a man dressed in a military uniform holding the sword. The sword is actually out of the scabbard. He's holding it aloft. And that represents the aid of the military in defending the Constitution. How many of your parents have served in the military? Okay. It doesn't matter if they were an officer or they were enlisted. There's a little bit of difference in the oath that they take, but everybody takes pretty much the same oath. And it's actually the same oath that, or almost, the same oath that the President of the United States takes when he assumes office. And it basically says this: I swear to preserve, protect, and defend something. What is that something? America. It's not America. It's not Georgia. It's not freedom. It's not the people.
Is it United States?
It is this right here. The Constitution. I swear to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And so Georgia's seal shows the importance. It actually shows the fact that the military, its purpose is to defend the Constitution. You turn it over, and I gave you both sides. Nobody ever sees the back side. There's a ship with cotton and tobacco. There's a man plowing. There's a couple of words, agriculture and commerce, and that refers to the seal's motto. That is the seal's motto. And then there's a date at the bottom on both sides, 1776, refers to the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And what month and what day was that? July what? July 4th, 1776. All right. I got to figure out how to deal with that because that disturbs me. All right. I'm going to give you vocabulary words for Unit 2. We didn't have any in Unit 1. And you can work on these. You got about 11 minutes to work on them in class. You might want to listen to me. In your addendum, that's that little spiral bound book. Yes, there is a glossary on page 80. Page 80, and that's where you will find these words. You should define them on a separate sheet of notebook paper, separate sheets of notebook paper, and bring them to class with you tomorrow. All of them. Yeah. These words right here that I'm giving you. Because the gloss, that's where you find the definitions. She knew that. Yeah. Yes. Where do you find the answers? Page 80. 80. 80. Right there. All right. Your quiz over these words has already been set. It's August the 20th, which is next Friday. Okay. Next Friday.